So let's start with Ali, and then we go. Yeah, go Ali. Welcome.
Hi. I think I've met most of you, but for those who haven't, I work with Pip and Daisy and Carl, everyone at Forum Central, just supporting this work. So more of a absorber than a sharer, but I'll be hosting a discussion later on as well today.
Thank you. So Anna isn't here. Annette.
Hi, I'm Annette and I work at Modern Traction Leeds and I lead on the BME Hub, and I've been doing work over the period of the communities of interest to gather the thoughts and opinions and feelings of the BME community.
Thank you, Annette. Caris? Oh no, Anne. See, I'm terrible at, I can't do my blooming alphabet.
Anne Crossland, Young Lives Leeds, obviously working with groups and organisations with 0 through to 25 years old. Very quiet at the minute because it's the holiday period.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. And then it's Caris. Definitely C after then, isn't it?
Hi everyone, I'm Caris Green. I'm from the Leeds Society for Deaf and Blind People. So I think, as Anne said, it does seem to be a little bit quiet at the minute, which is nice to catch our breath a little bit, I think, and just kind of refocus on what comes next. But yeah, I think very much for us at the minute, it's about how we can start kind of face-to-face engagement with the community again. That's my kind of key focus really at the moment, because it has been quite separate. But obviously, a little bit of anticipation around some of the local changes and local lockdowns and things, and sort of thinking about how we plan in the future for that really, and considering how we adapt our services over the coming months, so that if we do lock down again, you know, what does that mean and how can we kind of do things differently or, you know, better or whatever. So yeah, that's the key thing for me. Lovely to see everyone.
Oh, and you, yeah, thank you. So Claire isn't here from Women's Lives Leeds. So Damien, hi Damien. Oh, you're on mute.
That's a mistake there. Oh yeah, it's Damien Daughtry from Feel Good Factor and Orion Partnership. Currently project managing the Ambassador project, supporting local businesses to direct vulnerable isolated men to services and activities. Yeah, nothing much to report. Just so that Forum Central have just put in a joint bid for a citywide men's network with associated activities, and that got sent to the lottery this week. So that's good news, and hopefully even better news down the line.
Yeah, good luck with that, because that's, you know, it's long been recognised as a bit of a gap in the city, hasn't it, around that kind of network to bring that together. So brilliant work there. Oh, thank you. Jeanette?
I think most of you heard earlier on, I'm Jeanette and I'm from Women's Lives Leeds. I'm the project manager, but I'm employed by Leeds Women's Aid. I lead on 4 different projects for Women's Lives Leeds. 2 are big lottery funded, 2 now are Comet Relief funded, and I also lead on their Children in Need project as well. So lots of things to keep me busy. So I wish that my time was a little bit more quieter, but I don't think it ever will be.
Having from Health Watch Leeds, one of the community project workers, currently doing a lot of work around the weekly check-ins and collecting people's voices around Leeds.
Excellent, thank you. You're very welcome, Parveen. And also, again, some of the link into younger people's voices as well, which is good, isn't it? Simon, welcome from Faith Forum. Hi.
Yeah, Simon Phillips. I'm representing the faith sector. And I think Jay has actually deputised for me the last few meetings. I think the big thing for the faith sector at the moment is around places of worship slowly opening. And obviously there's a variety of different approaches that places of worship are taking based on, depending on their size and obviously the appetite of leadership, and maybe guidance from umbrella organisations. Some places of worship have got really, really good practice. So the Gurdwara on Chapeltown Road, for example, is certainly seen as a model of good practice. So I think that's probably the main challenge for the faith sector. One thing that people might be interested in is that something called the Faith Covenant, which Leeds City Council have been overseeing, is going to be reinvigorated. It's something which is linked to really ways in which the council could be held accountable for stuff that they do, making sure they involve the faith sector. But obviously there's various intersectionalities, if you like. So, you know, faith and disability, faith and women, faith and men, etc., etc. So I actually have a meeting this afternoon, which is to do with the Faith Covenant.
Owen.
Hi, I'm Owen. I'm the manager of Leeds Autism AIM. I guess kind of everyone's adjusting to changes in shielding and lockdown rules and whether or not there's a second wave. And that's particularly difficult for the autistic population because change is always difficult. Ambiguity is always difficult. So we're trying as much as possible to kind of work with people to kind of ride those waves. Unemployment's coming through quite a lot, so people being dismissed from their jobs and that most likely being discriminatory. But when organisations like ACAS, who would normally give people advice, are completely swamped, and people aren't in unions, you know, that's becoming quite difficult to help people with that kind of stuff, really. I guess kind of people there's definitely been people coming in who we're referring more so, like, you know, kind of maybe a slightly delayed thing in terms of other organisations should be seeing lots more autistic people coming through onto their books. So what we're trying to do is promote kind of self-advocacy tools, so kind of profiles and things like that. And planning tools for people to be able to engage better with services. So I think I mentioned before some really exciting work that's come through this and linking up through here is with Engaged Leeds and them having autism champions within their service. So that's really good. I guess two things at the end are, you know, complex casework. So people coming in with multiple issues has risen because, you know, they've been storing up those issues. And that makes it a bit more difficult to work with people, you know, when they come in with 3 things and then it's 6 things and then it's 9 things. You know, kind of, we've had an increase in requests from organisations for training. So if there was any asks from decision makers, it would be to maybe look at organisations who do work with complex people with multiple issues and whether or not funding could be found for them, and whether or not advice could be given around employment. I think that's a big ask. Money to be able to provide training to people, which could be you know, kind of beneficial for all of us here if money is available to provide training to organisations so that outcomes can be speeded up a bit. Because if we're going to get a massive wave of people coming into our services, being able to get people through those services, it would be really useful. And I think training is crucial to that. But that's me, yeah.
Brilliant. No, really important points there, Owen. And I think that sort of future planning of, you know, what we know that the need is going to be, and that kind of, you know, realizing that we need to do some work now and start making that ask and make people aware of that now is really helpful. I don't know if you want to come back on that point, Jeanette, around unemployment. And I know one of the issues that's been raised has been around a disproportionate impact on women of some of the both furloughing and unemployment. I don't know if that's something that's kind of come through for you, whether you want to pick that up now or whether that's just something for people to think about.
I mean, I suppose I could comment, but it is in the report. But
yeah,
what we found was that there's 2 parts to it. There's a bit about immediately, and then there's a bit about future. Yeah. So some women are, because of the furlough scheme, are on much shorter term contracts, part-time work, and balance a lot more sort of roles and responsibilities within the home place period. and then also the future being very uncertain about what they're seeing now around redundancies and employment, and whether or not they're going to have any employment opportunities further down the line because of the way things are going. Yeah.
No, really important that we kind of flag those and clock those issues. Thank you all so much. Hi Sam, welcome Sam. Hi, you right? Do you want to say hello? Sorry, get yourself a seat and a cup of tea. How are you doing?
Hi everyone, apologies for being a bit late.
Not
Are we
at
just
all.
doing a quick update or just a quick hello?
Whichever, you just do a quick hello now if you like, and then you can always come back to an update.
Thank you. Hi everyone.
Brilliant. It's great to see everybody. So yeah, no, there's some, I think there's always kind of new and kind of shifting some specific stuff incidentally around children shielding. So there were 1,800 children in Leeds that were on the shielding list, and the expectation is that the vast majority of those will be kind of stepped off that list anyway. Incidentally, so if people had been shielding and are very anxious about returning, people, or if there's a strong clinical reason why people, still need to be very protected, then they can, have that discussion with doctors and with clinical people, particularly in relation to statutory sick pay, which is one of the particular issues. Obviously, that doesn't apply to children. But for example, and we'd flag this again in the information, statutory sick pay is no longer able to be paid. So workers have to rely on their employers to make workplaces safe for them if they previously were shielding and are now going back to work. But if for reasons perhaps of very strong anxiety or clinical reasons, then doctors or if it's felt that they still need to be protected and to be on statutory sick pay, then that is an option, but that has to be clearly written on people's sick notes, or fit notes it actually is, isn't it? So yeah, sorry to kind of labour that point, but it kind of, I think that is one of the kind of tricky things that I know there's been some concern about. But it looks like the vast majority of children won't, obviously they wouldn't get statutory sick pay, but they'll be off that shielding list. And there were some particular issues around schools which had been very much flagged here as one of the areas of concern. So we've been raising that. And the ask actually of all of you is if people have got particular examples around families' concerns around school and returning to school, it would be really helpful to have that. But we've certainly been flagging the need to get really clear information out as soon as possible to schools, because that is an area of concern. I think the other point just to make is just that there is a bit of sort of reassurance in the whole system that we are doing, lots of people are working together, and Leeds is working well in partnership to try and put things in place that mean that, we are in a good position. So hopefully, even though things are difficult and we anticipate that there will be issues, we have got people learning lessons and trying to put things in place to make things safer and better for people, and particularly that equalities lens is something that is being talked about across different organisations in the city, and particularly for health organisations. If anybody's interested, we can share some slides that we got yesterday about, there was a phase 3 NHS document that came out on Friday. It's basically Nhs Guidance, and that includes what NHS organisations have to do, and that includes a real strong focus on health inequalities actually. Yeah, I think those were the kind of main things to say about shielding, but other than to say it is paused and it may well be back again in the next few months. For example, it may well be that people are returning to being advised to be shielded, but that'd be a national bit of advice.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're aware of is that I think for our community, not everybody is still accessing things at the moment, and slightly more limited around some of the understanding and some of the communication that people are getting. So I think that's another reason why we're keen to try and bring back some of the face-to-face support for us, because I suppose it's that fine line of encouraging people to come out at a time where they're not being encouraged to, and keeping everybody safe, but at the same time giving people access to information and giving people access to each other, really, which has been one of the challenges for us. So if people are on social media or, you know, have got access to doing video calls and things like that, it's not a problem. But for the people who don't, it is just more difficult, I suppose, that engagement, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Owen, Simon, anybody else have particular thoughts?
I mean, like, I think agoraphobia is going to have kind of increased massively, and like people are just, you know, like really scared because it seems chaotic, and therefore those shielding services, support services, it's really good to kind of know that they're still there. And I think that's, you know, something that's been fed back, and it's good to know that locally we've still got those
mechanisms.
I guess like something I'd feed back to the decision makers is around, and I think I've said it before, you know, the kind of official reasons for people shielding and the unofficial reasons for people shielding. Like, it needs to be recognised that those unofficial reasons for people shielding are really valid, and you know, like, the message is put out to those people, you know, that they can still access them locally if they can, you know, if the criteria is there. Because I think, yeah, people are still frightened. You know, the introduction of masks has been, you know, like a difficult one, because people who are exempt from wearing masks have been getting a lot of hate crime from not wearing them. But also, equally, there's a lot of people not wearing them for not valid reasons, and that creates a lot of anxiety for autistic people and everyone in general. So, yeah, that's what I'd add to that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, yeah, and, you know, obviously mental health actually is one of the most, you know, kind of sort of threading through themes that we're raising and that everybody, I think, is experiencing. But I think some of those particular issues for people, you know, and also some of the fact that some people have much preferred actually, you know, living a more closed in life. For some people that's been a positive, so hanging on to some of those. Sam wanted to come in, and then Annette. And just before Sam comes in, just to say the shielding group in the city will continue, so we'll continue to be you know, keeping you up to date on what the thinking is around that, so to again reassure people that, you know, that's not just vanishing because the national position. Sam.
Hi, I was asked by Public Health in the group that I work with to bring a question to the group, and it actually fits in, I think, around the shielding discussion. It's the government has put on their government website some social distancing cards or badges. I don't know if anyone's come across them. I'm on a different device, so I find it really difficult to just share things in the chat. It's quite simple. It says, please give me some space, and it looks like you can either print it and display it or have it on your mobile phone. So for people that need that extra bit of space, they're available on the .gov website to give that signal to others. And I were asked to speak to the group just to get your feedback on what your thoughts are on this, whether this is something useful to help people.
So
brilliant.
Yeah,
Simon.
I was going to mention that, Sam. I mean, I think it's really good that, as well as the social distancing cards, there's various exemption cards that people can download to explain why they're not wearing a mask. I think there's a couple of things here, because obviously people need to not only remember to download those cards or exemption cards or social distancing cards, but remember to actually display them, or to show them when somebody asks them. And I think, and I've had conversations with Owen about in the context of autism alert cards, often in the heat of the moment. So if somebody's challenging you in a shop, you know, if you have that state of anxiety, will you remember to display that card? And I think the other thing here is, obviously, shops and public transport providers need to be aware that people might be showing those cards, and actually to show some, you know, respect accordingly. So I think it's really a case of awareness raising, both amongst people who might need to use those cards, as well as the wider public, that people are going to be showing those cards. But I think it is really, really good that those cards are available. There's obviously the wider issue here about some shops which actually are not necessarily adhering to the social distancing rules. So there's some shops I've been in where it's been very, very difficult to actually keep 2 meters apart from people, because either the aisles are quite narrow, or in some cases, and I went into one shop which I won't mention, they were sort of reloading the shelves, and so the aisles were even narrower because there were crates there and trolleys.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add, I was talking to someone yesterday who works with BME older people, and they were saying there's quite a lot of anxiety amongst that group. Most of them were shielding due to health problems or age usually. And there's a real fear of coming back out because of the disproportionate impact on BME communities of COVID. So that's something that's proving to be an issue. So they're still providing services sort of online and visiting people at home and sort of doing social distancing that way. They've not gone back to their service yet.
Yeah, really, really important point. And yeah, again, yeah, we need to keep reminding people reminding people about how all of this feels for people from more marginalised groups. You know, all of the decision around, you know, last week was felt very hard by certain communities, wasn't it? And not to feel there's lots of issues there, I think.
These 1,800 children that have stepped off the list, I think it's very important that the information that goes to the parents is very clear, very easy to understand, because there's still going to be a reluctance from parents to send children back to school from them communities, and also if the children have additional needs. So I think there's got to be something that's very
absolutely yeah. And you've all had a copy of the letter that's been sent. Any feedback on that and on the comms? I think there has been a real effort to improve comms, you know, not least based on feedback from this group and lots of other people about trying to be clear, but you know, it's really lengthy, isn't it? And the other thing that we're about to get, which I don't think we've had yet, have we, Daisy, is the new Routes to Support document.
No, not the final one.
I'm sure it'll come out today. So again, that's kind of a really useful resource that, you know, we can all share and you can all share with organisations. It's not meant for public consumption, that one, but it's a really brilliant resource for different organisations. But yeah, no, I think absolutely it's such an important point. And yeah, we'll come on to schools a bit more in a minute. Annette.
Yeah, I just wanted to add as well with regards to information and messages and publicity, that one of the things that some of our hub members have been saying is that even when the messages come out in the different languages and or you know, come out on a regular basis, they're still finding it difficult to translate those messages to people in the communities. So if they're not understanding the message and how to translate, they're not able to then translate effectively to their community. So they were saying there needs to be a way of doing more face-to-face communication, even though we're still kind of under the social distancing. But they were saying that's more effective, particularly where English isn't the first language. So
yeah, and that value of contact. Sam.
I just wanted to add to Annette's point. I've emailed UPIC this morning with the links and all the information on the COVID-19. So we've got the infographics, the translations, we've got YouTube videos and walk to test centre information, walkthrough videos. It's all on the same email. So hopefully that's really easy for people to engage with. As it might have been discussed, there were some changes last week. So face coverings are being expanded into wider settings from 8th of August on Monday, and we've linked to that information And there's also an increase in the time that someone has to self-isolate if they have symptoms, increased from 7 to 10 days. We are looking to do additional communications, but we were ready to press go on Friday and we couldn't because the rules changed and we had to check everything. So rather than delay things, again, to get everything perfect, we just go in with what we've got, and we've put some extra information into the email. Chetna and I, Chetna you met during the last meeting, are trying to engage with organisations. So we're working with the NET to do a BAME group, organisations, community groups, to help people understand what the messages are, to help people communicate that with other people. And we're doing that with a number of audiences. So if anybody feels that there needs to be something for a group or networks that you work with, please do get in touch with me and we can look to arrange that. And also, the feedback that we're giving to public health after community engagement is there needs to be some type of training available to people who are helping people understand information. Yes. It is a public health issue, and regardless of our various experiences around health, we need to feel really confident in the information that we're sharing. So they're looking to develop some sessions in addition to what me and Chetna are doing. And lastly, there is some third sector funding coming available. So organisations who want to help support around the COVID-19 messages, there's some funding available. And as soon as it is, Pip or I will share that information, whoever gets hold of it first. So there is some activities happening. Unfortunately, as always, it's never as quick as the situation changing.
Yeah, and yes, on that kind of resource issue, so Richard Jackson from Voluntary Action Leeds and myself and Tim Taylor are meeting this afternoon to discuss kind of what different elements there might be. But the plan around that resource to the third sector is that there will be a mixture of some grants to existing organisations that have got public health contracts already, some that support other community groups and organisations that perhaps haven't been the sort of usual suspects or connected in previously, but that we make sure that we're really extending out, particularly to, you know, some of the very specific, you know, BAME is such a sort of horrible lumping together, isn't it, of so many different diverse and, you know, complicated different organisations and needs. So what we need to do is really think that through in a much more kind of careful and nuanced way that makes sure that, you know, kind of funding is reaching right kind of organisations, and then also having some kind of micro grant, really tiny accessible bits of money that can enable things to happen. But also some of this kind of facilitation and networking, and, you know, it's brilliant to hear Owen and Simon and lots of other people connecting up because of this work, and we think there's more that can be done that helps make those links and connections and kind of shares some of that good practice. So yeah, we'll certainly let you know, and if anybody's got particular suggestions or thoughts about what's needed, as ever, we would love to hear from you. We're always really keen to hear from you, and we'll send that information out, Sam, that you'd sent this morning. Yeah, we just kind of wanted to bring it here and make sure that we were kind of building it in to the other information from today. So if I just rattle through a few other things. So in terms of test and trace, there's a lot happening obviously around this area, and one of the things that being involved sort of in this work gives us is an information source of information that we can help share back with you, but it also enables us to share all of your issues into that. So certainly this morning I've been sharing the issues that Annette had raised, particularly around people from BAME communities and how they are perceiving the information and concerns that they have. The information about schools, lots of other things get fed in through those processes. So here's my feedback though. Yes, Sam, certainly we'll share that email with the group after the meeting, absolutely. So I've sort of mentioned that as a system, Leeds is really trying to work sensibly and in partnership and connect in lots of different ways and have a real prevention and sort of building on assets and relationships in existing organisations. In terms of our rate, so the infection rate, it is a bit higher, and there have been some discussions about where that leaves Leeds, but it's still much lower than some of the other kind of, you know, areas, you know, like Blackburn and Bradford, and areas that we've kind of clocked that are on the news, and there's a real sort of action plan in place around that. But just to kind of reassure people, there's such close monitoring of that situation, and it's literally about how many cases a day. So currently, this some of it is probably a bit more confidential, but there's real close monitoring of those numbers and a real sense of understanding what that really means. Broadly, the picture in Leeds is that it's the sort of issues that are arising are around community spread broadly, that in very small pockets, which are being really closely monitored. So there are broadly some really good workplace measures in place, for example, and some really good examples of where, the things that are putting in place are being seen to make a difference. But what it does mean by having the increasing testing is there is some awareness of some areas where there are slightly higher, they don't quite count as an outbreak, but where there are slightly raised levels. So what that means, and you may have heard some of this, is there are some areas in LS4, so around Burley, and LS8, where there's extra provision going in. There's some door knocking and conversations that are happening directly with people in those areas, but also a real desire to connect with some of the community organisations. So a lot of that's happening actually through the Better Together contract that Public Health have, because they already fund lots of community organisations, and that's another kind of good position that Leeds is in, because it has that network. It can use those networks at times alongside people from housing and lots of other bits of the local authority and primary care, and we've got that kind of breadth of connection, haven't we, that's being used. But there are some additional sites. So there's mobile sites at Fernville and at Kirkstall Leisure Centres at the moment, and we've been trying to connect in, and again it's a conversation we're having around community cares volunteers and whether we can help make sure that some of that's connecting in. So those kinds of things are happening. There's national conversations, as you can imagine, about kind of where Leeds sits, but so these things will kind of come up in, more information will be shared as we know it, but that's the current situation. And there are other things that are happening which I think is really helpful. So for example, people are thinking about community events and things that are going to be happening. So for example, there was going to be an event on some private land, and Public Health are able to have conversations and make sure that people aren't taking undue risks. So again, I think this is quite reassuring that in Leeds we've got that approach, that people are kind of making that direct contact. There's a lot of new posts and roles and people being recruited, particularly through Public Health. So there will be more people to help kind of manage all of this, as well as obviously linking in through organisations like all of yours and having that proper resource to enable you to do that. So to backfill and to, give additional capacity. One of the things that I did flag is that more women than men are going for testing. So there's some particular comms and messaging that's going to be focused at men, and we can make sure that Damien and other people kind of get some of that information. So I think, again, that sort of shows that there's some real targeted thinking being done. And obviously all of the issues around shielding has been picked up and noted. There are going to be some webinars that we'll share the link for that are around people and workplaces. So NHS England have done some work around that, so we'll share that too. In terms of schools and some of that particular information, so basically I think there's issues around schools and the sense that people are really uncertain, that the information hasn't perhaps been put out in a clear enough way to people. I think the general message is that people will be expected to go back to schools. Obviously individual schools are looking at contingency plans and they will be communicating directly with parents, but we were raising that actually it would be really helpful to have a citywide message and to reassure people about what's happening. There's an awful lot going on in terms of making sure that testing is available in schools and that schools are supported where they've got bubbles of kind of pupils and classes, to just think how they manage that, really appropriately, that they're not overreacting, but obviously that they're kind of working well with all of that. So just that is happening, and that there was apparently a really good public health animation which was produced in June when schools were about to go back, but because that situation changed, so I was again suggesting that it's really urgent to get that information and make that information available so that that can be shared. I think those were the main things in terms of the schools things. So does all of that around test and trace, we have got, the other thing that we've got that we will share when we share Sam's email, there are 2 sets of messages that we got that are going to counsellors and households. So there's a set of messages that are for households of multiple occupation, about the signs and symptoms and about isolation, and also about practically how people can manage if they're living in shared housing. So we'll make sure that that goes out. And then there were also some messages that have gone to local elected members, local councillors. So we can share that too if that's helpful, so that you know what information is being shared. And then that helps develop a bit of a script if people are having conversations, so that people have got the words to start saying to people, because sometimes that's what's difficult, isn't it? And I think that comes back to Annette's point about it's one thing translating things, but it's having it in a form that feels easier to say and easier to kind of get across to people. The other thing, which I think does relate to all of that, was there were issues raised last time around PPE and availability, and about people being able to get access for people using services. So Daisy's done a lot to make sure that we've got information, that we're getting that information out to you about free and at cost PPE that's available. There are the at cost stuff from Leeds City Council. We have got a list of the prices which they didn't want to put out there because it does change, but if anybody does want that list to get kind of indicative sense of that, we can let people know. So again, it's important that the third sector has access to that information, and there are also still quite a lot of free masks, and we're also looking at some organisations that are producing masks. So we'll continue to do what we can to make that information available about what's around. The other thing that I did want to just mention around the schools is, so Kevin McCready, who's one of the public health leads, was very keen to hear exact examples of families or issues that were being raised. So particularly Anne and Health Watch, who I know were having some direct conversations. If people have got kind of specific examples, that would be really helpful, and obviously that will help them get the messaging right, won't it? If they've, rather than just saying people are really concerned and worried, if we've got kind of specific things that we can mention, that would be really good. Universities, I just wanted to mention, because obviously there's a big impact, isn't there, for the city around students. There's around 70 or 80,000 students kind of normally that are expected into the city in September. Obviously there will be a lot done online, so people won't be having kind of face to face, but there's still a sense that there will be a lot of people. So there's a lot being done working with Leeds Student Medical Practice and the local care partnership, as well as they link in with lots of other public health and GP and university networks around that. So again, some sort of reassurance that people are doing the planning and thinking around that. And it's anticipated there'll be a walk to centre in Leeds University, so by where the old grammar school, the corner of Woodhouse Moor, for people who know that bit of the city, and that will be open to the community and general public as well. So again, another opportunity to encourage people to get testing if they have any concerns or symptoms. I think that was all of that bit of feedback. The other bit of feedback that I wanted to mention was about the digital inclusion report. So I don't know, Parveen, if you want to say anything specific around that, but Health Watch produced a fantastic report around digital inclusion, and it does a lot to raise issues, particularly around health inequalities, and look at how we can all work together in that and on that. I know there's been a few some concerns raised about some of all of that, in terms of particular organisations and how it links with this communities of interest network. So what we're going to be doing is adding in a paragraph around that and making sure that we're being really clear and explicit around the link with this group, and lots of organisations, all of you connecting in, and other organisations that have really sort of partnered and helped. But it's also, I think, a really strong commitment from us at Forum Central, and I know Health Watch and Voluntary Action Leads and other partners in the city, to make sure that we keep that health inequalities lens around digital inclusion and keep pushing. I think there's been some big wins in the city around resource to that, but there's such a lot more needed to be done. Jeanette, hi.
Hi. It has actually been drawn to my attention this morning, and I couldn't believe my luck when I found out this was on the agenda. There is a disappointment from the women's hub and community that there is only 3 mentions of women in the whole of the report. And considering we've just completed that COVID-19 report, which includes digital inclusion, there is a big disappointment from women across the city that there is no mention as to how they could be digitally included. So I don't know whether there's an opportunity here to probably revisit or have a section like you have in other parts of the report around gender and have that focus on there.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. Yeah, no, I'm certainly really happy to raise that. I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, Parveen, about it, but by all means, come back if you want to. But yeah, no, absolutely. And it's very much a live piece of work and an ongoing. You know what it's like. None of us are ever saying that work we do is perfect or complete. There's always more to learn and more to do. So absolutely, we can make sure that feeds in. The link around the link to this group, I think, is something we can make sure feeds in. I know 100% Digital as well are also keen to make sure that there's some kind of clear links made. So absolutely, we will make sure that's fed in. But yeah, no, I think everybody is trying to work together on this, isn't it, and to try and make sure that we do get it right and kind of pick up those issues. So absolutely, Jeanette, thank you for raising that. That's really helpful. I think that was it in terms of feedback, and I think partly it was just, as well as always, trying to demonstrate that the issues that are raised here and through other mechanisms do get fed to decision makers. And really good, Owen, to hear you kind of specifically saying, these are my asks of decision makers in the city, because that's absolutely the opportunity that we've got to raise things and to kind of make sure that we are kind of making a difference, that we're not just talking about stuff, that things happen because of things that we raise. So yeah, really appreciate that. So unless anybody's got any other particular comments on any of those, shall I hand over to you, Ali, to pick up a bit of a conversation about the action plan and what next?
Just building a little bit on all the conversations and a meeting I was in yesterday actually with Sam. We're looking at developing an action plan and a terms of reference for the communities of interest work. And I kind of wanted to get a bit of input from you guys to support that. So there's a lot of appetite from health and care partnerships and potentially other sectors for this kind of function. But I'm kind of interested in hearing and having a bit of a discussion with you guys about what it means to you, what will kind of keep you engaged in this sort of forum, what will keep you engaged in sharing the feedback, because obviously in the beginning it was very much about responding to something we were all going through, which was crazy in terms of lockdown and the outbreak and all that. But we need to think to future-proof a bit, to think about what it means to you. What will keep you kind of connected, like the thoughts on the intersectionality. And I'm going to quote Sam, if you don't mind, because I thought it was really great what you said yesterday about this group was providing an opportunity for people to support each other and really fight each other's corner where it might not have been able to or known how to before. But then also what you kind of want it not to be, what you want it not to turn into. If anyone has any comments on that. And I suppose I might just leave the floor open and just say what if everyone or anybody could share what this group means to you as a starting point and why it's good for your organisation, that would be great.
So I wanted to say I've not been attending these. It's been my other colleagues, but I have found them. I came last week and this week, and I have found them quite useful and really helpful for what everybody's sharing. Because sometimes, because we're doing other parts of work, it's really difficult to know what's going on in the city. So it's been really helpful to know what's going on in different communities and where people are at. And it's interesting point what Jeanette raised as well, you know, about not having women the voices more. So it's just those little things that sometimes we forget. We try not to forget, but we forget. But it's just a good way to bring things together.
Thank you. And connecting. And it's like the informal. I don't know. I think this group, in terms of verbalising and having discussions and hearing things that you might hear in an office. Yeah, thank you, Parveen.
Sam, and then Owen.
Hi everyone, my apologies, I also have to go at 12, so I'll speak quickly and let others come in. For me, it's been really important what Parveen mentioned about that flow of information has been really, really useful, especially in a time when there's so much information. It allows us to focus in on what's important. But also from my personal perspective, we start to get equality when we fight for each other's inequalities. And I think COVID has really highlighted inequality, as we all know. So that intersectionality, this has brought more intersectionality conversations and overlaps between all of our groups, which I found have been really useful. I think as the action plan gets developed, it helps us turn that into meaningful actions of how we're going to take that forward. But certainly the group has been really useful for the work that I've been covering.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
I can only echo what other people are saying about the fact that it you know, we all have people within our services who overlap and have similar issues, but you know, might be minorities within our own services, and it's really good to know the information about that. I mean, my only comment would be that you know, really it would be good to open this up a bit more. I guess one of the issues everybody's had has been information overload and maybe meeting overload and that kind of thing. But you know, the messages that we get through here are really important, and it has been difficult, I must say, to try and get updates from other organisations. You know, and extending that invite out, I think, would be really helpful for people, you know, and to get those messages out and to get more viewpoints, and whether or not that then leads to having some sort of subgroup discussions or offshoot discussions. But, you know, it'd be good to open it up a bit more.
Thank you. Charis.
Hi, I just wanted to add that from a personal perspective for me, I think most people are aware, but I actually only joined the Society on the 9th of March. So I was very new to the organisation, and I think my first job really was closing it down for COVID. So for me to have the opportunity to sit on this group and get to know people and understand what's been going on across the city has been invaluable, really. And I think, you know, it's been really great for me to get a real good flavour of what's available in the city and to kind of have that support, really, at a time which I expected would be sort of hugely isolating, and it hasn't been. I remember packing up my car with anything I could find in the office that seemed like it would keep me busy, and then I kind of came into this group and similar ones on the back of this. And really, it's been great. It's given me loads of opportunities and different things to do. So, it's just to share that, really.
Thank you very much. I think that's really important part in it that we don't often talk about. But in terms of personal development, as part of this stuff and personal growth, it only helps the service users we're working with, doesn't it? Anybody else?
Yeah, what I think is great about this group is how well connected everybody is, and I think that's a testament to the communities of interest model, when you think about the amount of constituencies, if I can use that word, that we all represent. And I think, as other people have said, it's that intersectional work that we'll be able to do. I mean, there's so much work that goes on in the faith sector, which cuts across other things like, you know, when we're a few years ago for Interfaith Week, we did something around LGBT people of faith. And I want to do something around, you know, the experience of men and boys in faith, particularly as it relates to violence against women. And if you think of the amount of communities of interest that would come into that particular work, and it's just a networking really, which is great here.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm scribbling down so many notes, so I'm trying to.
Yeah, just personally as well, I'd like to say it's just been so brilliant to work in a very different way with people and have different conversations. And I'm particularly interested about how, you know, issues around racism and poverty and some of those issues that actually really impact, you know, hate crime for all sorts of different reasons across, you know, the different groups, being able to work together and understand each other's challenges. I think Sam's point as well about, you know, we'll get equality when we start fighting for each other's injustices is so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think just echoing what everybody said as well, I think it's been a really good opportunity during this difficult time to connect with other communities of interest that are dealing with specific specialist areas, and to find out what their challenges are as well, and to understand what's crossing over, how we interconnect. So I think for us in the BME Hub, I think going forward, there's been a lot of development in the last few months, especially on the back of Black Lives Matter, and obviously with COVID-19 disproportionately impacting BME communities. And also, with my other hat on, the disproportionate impact on women emotionally through this impact. So, and that, I know, looking at it from a BME perspective, impacts on a lot of BME women and the role that they play within families, and some of the issues around domestic violence and so on. So it's highlighting and kind of giving us a platform to share some of that information. I think going forward, perhaps maybe the platform could be that sort of platform that is used to share and learn, so that some of the things that Pip just said about understanding racism, dismantling some of those structures and that kind of thing, that can also be happening within a group like this as well.
And just, sorry if I might, just briefly, I think that sort of generous leadership and sharing, you know, sorry, I haven't even touched on the conversation that was happening on the message board about visors between, you know, Caris and Owen and Simon. You know, it's that sort of general connection and knowledge and sharing of knowledge, you know, alongside the practical things, and that sense that we've all got so much to bring to this has been good as well. Are there any negative things, any things that we could improve on?
It's perfect.
Nothing's perfect. We're trying to be good enough. Yeah, we're all just trying to be good enough.
The silence is golden, but I do think that perhaps, you know, going forward, obviously this is a platform that has been created because of COVID, and having it on Zoom, you know, has been it's been challenging, I don't know. But I think for me, going forward, I think we should be looking at having more meetings like this, because I think it enables more people to access it, and people who might struggle to travel or might not have, you know, the capacity to travel across the city to attend meetings, just to maintain that connection. So,
yeah, that's good. And Owen's point as well about opening up to more people, I think, is a really good one, because there's something about experiencing the conversation firsthand, isn't there, and being directly connected in. Yeah.
I think just to add as well, the tone of the meetings is really good, I think, because the last couple, unfortunately, I haven't been able to make, but you feel as though you can actually dip in and dip out, as you mentioned at the beginning, Pip. And I think that's quite important because it makes people feel more comfortable, one, to share things, and also to feel as though just because you've missed something, it doesn't matter. You can still kind of come in and you know, step in and step out of what's going on as well, which I think is important to make it more continuous as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I think,
Yeah.
we've learned a lot of different ways of working, haven't we, that, are helpful. Brill. Anything else in that? Obviously, any other thoughts? And obviously we'll make sure that people who aren't here today, have opportunity to feed in as well.
Yeah, and anything that is created will be shared before we're finalised as well. So feel free to get in touch at any point to input if you have any thoughts later.
Yeah, definitely. Can I just come back to the digital inclusion report? Have people read it? It is an amazing report, and it does, in lots of ways, do a really good job of putting the kind of issues around people being excluded and kind of really started to look at that. I really take on board, Jeanette's point, and, there are other people, some of whom connected with this group who have been a bit frustrated that particular issues haven't been flagged, and we can absolutely make sure we pick that up. But I think it's also, I'd hate us to lose the fact that it's really great that as a city we've done this piece of work, at real speed, that's really put that issue around digital exclusion on the map and got lots of people in kind of health and the local authority and beyond into business and, other parts of the city talking about something that certainly was one of the very early issues that came up from this group, didn't it, around both recognising that some people were very excluded and certain things have been done. So, for example, there will be connectivity permanently put into one of the traveller sites in the city, for example, and some of those things partly as a result of it being raised through this group. So some very practical positive things will be happening, but also it helps shine a light on some of the people who won't ever be digitally excluded and nor they might not want to be, and even if they did want to be, it's not realistic. And some of the hard paper materials that have been circulated by Time to Shine, who've done a fantastic they did a brilliant magazine that's being shared now, that's being produced every week, I think, is it, or every couple of weeks. Touchstone have done some really good work, and also Forum Central itself and Mindwell have produced some hard copy information, which if anybody wants access to is available. That's a kind of real resource for people to have, a physical crisis card type bit of information to kind of keep in their pocket or to kind of keep about them, because that will always be needed as well, won't it? So just kind of conscious that completely take on board the concerns about that piece of work, but let's not lose the kind of radical piece of work that actually puts people's voices and people's lived experience around that kind of front and center in a way that actually is very powerful as well. I don't know if anybody else has got thoughts on that, but I was just conscious I perhaps should have said that earlier in the meeting. I'll pick up a conversation with Jeanette, because I know she's had to leave.
I just wanted to just add to what you were just saying there, Pip, and I think one of the important things is the fact that this group enabled us to tap into what was happening directly in communities and raise those key issues at the time, at the point of crisis, and the fact that they were responding to so quickly built some trust within communities as well. So that was a positive, because stuff around the food as well, cultural food, that was another one that was responded to really quickly when it was raised, and also stuff about period poverty. So those were really key things that I think, were real positives at the time.
That's good. And I think that's one of the key roles, if we do, and I think we will have a commitment to working in this way going forward. It's having somewhere that can unblock barriers and flag things really quickly and has that direct line to people who are making decisions, and having the confidence that having a group of people, and it's not just one person saying it or even one organization, it's being able to distill those issues and you know, or that it's a really big issue for one organisation or a few people, you know, equally that's important. But because it comes from, you know, a communities of interest, it kind of gives it a stronger weight, doesn't it? And it gives it that kind of, I think, that sort of power and authority and status that has made the voices louder, and that amplifying some of the least heard voices and some of the more marginalised people, you know, is really important. And that's definitely something that we want to build on.
Yeah, and can I just add to that just as well, and to say that I think moving forward on the back of Black Lives Matter as well, changing that narrative around minorities and assuming that because it's a minority, it's not important. If it's even if it's one, it's as important as 10. So you know, we need to perceive things in a different kind of way. So the work we're doing here with communities of interest shouldn't be needed if we had a society that was fair and equal, because it would treat everyone as, you know, fairly and equally. But because we have to have it, that kind of highlights the fact that there's those disparities, so we can do some work to close those gaps.
Simon.
Well, my hand up was it was in the context of what I said earlier about the amount of contacts. But I had put something in the chat which was really, really small about when the agenda is sent out. I don't have a Google Docs account, so would it be possible just to attach it just to a regular Word document, or even embedding it in the text?
Definitely, I can do both, yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
I'll do that, thank you.
Echo what Annette was saying. I think, you know, kind of like it's really good to have this format, and like you know, I'm dyslexic. I find reading like massive documents really, really like draining, and I can't do it. Something like this is ideal, where you can actually have a conversation and get that information, and the links that you need is really far more accessible.
Excellent, thank you. That's good feedback. And I have to say, yeah, you know, I'm sure it's the same for voluntary action leads and other people. It's certainly made us think about the information that we're providing, and, you know, trying to have more films and infographics and make things a bit more accessible. And that's been brilliant for us as an organisation as well. So massive thanks to all of you for kind of helping us, you know, get that awareness.
Sorry, Pip, something else has just occurred to me in terms of future meetings. This is only a suggestion as to whether each meeting could adopt maybe a more detailed focus on each of the communities of interest, if people are willing to do that. So as well as the regular, you know, 1 or 2 minute update, maybe a little bit more about some of the more specific challenges that individual sectors have, but not necessarily specifically in the context of COVID, but just to explain a little bit about that particular sector as a whole.
And would that be about, it's interesting because this sort of idea of intersectional things that affect multiple people. So should it be something like poverty or digital exclusion or, you know, racism that people are experiencing, or should it be faith, community, and which do people have a view about how that would be? We could try either and both and see what works.
Yeah. Either would work. Yeah, whether it's a topic or something else. Yeah.
I mean, shall we put digital exclusion on the next topic, and then we could perhaps have a little bit more detailed look at that report and what that means? Would that be a helpful thing for the one that will be in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, that builds on what Annette was saying as well around a platform for learning in this group and sharing.
And then the other thing we have been doing is getting the rotating chair. So if anybody wants to chair one of the meetings, that would be brilliant. I know Iona's going to chair, I think, the next one, isn't she? And if anybody else, you know, Caris, Owen, Simon, Anne, anybody, Annette, you're really welcome. Be really good.